Good evening. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. We trust that you will be encouraged and affirmed and maybe share with you a few pieces of information that we hope will be of help to you. Would you please watch the dog? Would you please watch this dog? Watch this dog on the screen. Well, we just thought you may need a little bit of a laugh, but really there's another reason why we want you to see this dog. During this webinar, we're going to share with you a few videos. And if you have not heard the sound of the dog, the laughing behind there, could you please adjust the volume on your computer? You're going to see a small icon like a microphone there or a speaker there. Please adjust the volume so you can hear it well. Also, over the webinar, we're going to be sharing with you a few other slides. So it might be good to set the speaker in your Zoom setting. Set the speaker to your Zoom setting to what's called the presenter view. This will be of help to you a bit more. A story is told about a couple who went to the cardiologist because the husband had some health issues, and he went for a checkup with his cardiologist. After the cardiologist checked him, he said, "Do you mind if I speak with your wife alone?" So she said, "Sure, it's okay." He went out and said to her, "Oh, the doctor wants to talk to you." So she went in, and the doctor asked her to sit down and said, "Ma'am, I have some bad news, but I also have some good news. The bad news is that your husband's heart has deteriorated very rapidly, and he could die suddenly. But there's a few things that you could do that could prolong his life, and you could have several years of good life together. But it really depends whether you are willing to do that or not." So she said, "Well, what is it?" "No, I'll do whatever it takes. Sure, I'll do it." So, "Well, you see, your husband's heart responds to stress and joy. Stress reduces and aggravates his condition, but joy and delight and fun and love invigorates him and energizes him. So what I'd like you to do is really be extra affectionate. Be as feminine, attractive to him as possible. Sit him down and take his shoes off, rub his feet, rub his shoulder, caress him and hug him and kiss him a lot. Gives him his favorite meals. When he goes to bed, warm his bed up before he comes in and give him a nice drink and just cuddle him and really be just as affectionate and sexually interested as possible. Do you think you can do that?" She looked at him as dismayed and said, I get it, and she walked out. They got in the car, they were very quiet, and the husband said to her, "What did the doctor tell you when you were alone?" She looked at him and said, "You're going to die very soon." Anyway, you're going to die very soon. I guess we all are going to die. But we all are going to die sometimes, maybe soon, maybe sooner than we expect. I thought about this as I sat beside his bed in this dark room, in this hospital room. And I began to wonder, what will tomorrow bring? What will tomorrow bring? You see, up till very recently, he was doing very, very well. He was my surrogate father. He took care of me most of my life. I looked to him for strength and energy and care. But now I have to take care of him. And I do not know what tomorrow will bring. He was in good health. He enjoyed politics. He loved the news. We used to argue. He loved to argue about everything. But then all of a sudden, he said he wasn't feeling too well. He had some stomach pain. We thought maybe it's something he ate, but that persisted and went on for a long time. After a long while, the doctor insisted on having an ultrasound. The ultrasound revealed that his cancer, which had been in remission for 15 years, has returned with a vengeance. The oncologist told us it was stage 4. It was stage 4, and he has a matter of months, if not days, to live. And now here he is in the hospital in what could be his last hours. And I'm wondering, what should I do? What does he want me to do? After all, he was the one that gave us all the ideas. He was the one that told us what to do. But now, what does he really want to do for him? Should I be thinking of a funeral? Should I be planning for a funeral? What would he want to have in his funeral? Can I ask him? Can we talk? No, he didn't want to talk. There was no time to talk. There's no time to talk. It's too late to talk. As I thought about this, I thought about my own two children. What would happen if something happens to me and my wife suddenly? Would they know what to do? Would they know what to do? Really, this is what started this journey of documenting this material, which became this webinar. So really, it's part of our own life journey. It's a part of our own life journey. Would you please take a moment and watch this video?
I started the Conversation Project while I was going through my mother's own last years, months, days of life. We had never talked about her wishes for end-of-life care. From time to time, she would say something like, if I'm ever like that, pull the plug. But of course, when she became ill, there was no plug to pull. And also, my mother had dementia at the end, so we were not able to have any conversation about what her wishes were. So I was her healthcare decision maker, and in the last months, years really, I had a cascading number of decisions to make for which I assure you I was totally unprepared and in fact blindsided. What I learned from the experience of talking about my mother's end of life is that guess what? This experience is far too common. Far too many of the people we love are not dying in the way that they would choose. Far too many of their survivors are left guilty, depressed, uncertain about whether they have done the right thing. 70% of people say they want to die at home, and 70% of people are dying in hospitals and institutions. That's just a huge disconnect between what people wish and what happens. We can change that. That's why the Conversation Project emphasizes having a talk about values, about what matters to you, not what's the matter with you, but what matters to you, and what's important for you to think about at the end of your life. Are you a person who wants all the information, or do you want just enough? Are you someone who is going to make all decisions for yourself, or do you want your family to be involved? What's important to you at the end of life, then you've given them a real staff, a guide. Dying is part of the human experience. It's part of a natural progression in life. We have the capacity to transform how people die in this country.
They say that death is a terminal disease that is sexually transmitted. Death is a terminal disease that's sexually transmitted. We all are going to die. We all are going to die. You know, they say that 90% of people surveyed say that talking with loved ones about the end of life is very important. 90% say that talking about it is very important, yet only 27% actually do. Only 27% actually do. Why? Why? Allow me to suggest we don't talk about it because of fear. Fear of offending people, or possibly fear because we don't know what to talk about or how to talk about it. But allow me to say that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. God has given us a spirit of sound mind. And in a way, this webinar is part of the process of helping you walk through this journey using the spirit of a sound mind. So I'd like you to think of yourself, if you don't mind. Supposing, God forbid that, but you know, it could happen, something happens, and now all of a sudden, you find yourself in heaven. And you meet Peter, and he says, hey, look down there. Look down there. There's still some unfinished business. Who's going to take care of that unfinished business? Who's going to take care of that unfinished? There's loved ones there who are stressed, anxious, sad, upset. What do you expect them to do? So maybe I should ask you just for a moment now, who is the one person who is going to be in charge of all the stuff that you leave behind? Now, if you said your children, you're making your first mistake. Your first mistake. Because unfortunately, under the stress, conflicting opinions become major issues. We have 2 children. We love them dearly. We love them equally. But they are totally different from each other. And I can assure you, if they both have a common responsibility, they're going to try to figure out who does what, and it's going to be cause of conflict. So may I ask you to begin to identify only one person, or possibly divide the responsibilities very specifically to who is responsible for what. If somebody's going to be executing the will, who's going to be responsible for taking care of the clutter you leave behind? If one person is going to be responsible for arranging the funeral, who's going to take care of the legal stuff? Be sure to identify that person as one person and only one person. Otherwise, I can assure you, one is going to feel, oh, they are not doing enough, and the other person is feeling, I'm doing everything. Or they're going to disagree on the little things that could cause stress and conflict and even broken relationships that could last for a very, very long time. So may I ask you to take a moment right now. You might say it's your spouse. Well, that's wonderful if she's still around. But supposing you both are on a wonderful trip in Europe and there's an airplane crash, who will be that person? Could you please take a moment and in your notes there, write the name of the one person or the people that you're going to delegate specific responsibilities to. Because whoever you delegate that responsibility to is going to meet 6 people who care. Fortunately, there are people who care and people who will help them. And we're going to walk through each of these 6 people. Starting first with, guess what? The pastor. The pastor who has to arrange the funeral. Do you know that arranging a funeral has the same amount of details required to arranging a wedding? Yes, arranging a funeral has as much detail as there to arrange a wedding. Why not write down all the specific details that you want to have beforehand to help the pastor? Oh, then there's the funeral director. A friend of mine who owns a funeral home showed me a list of 75 questions. 75 questions that a funeral director will ask. Why not have that pre-prepared and all these questions already answered? Oh, there's the lawyer, of course. And you know that if you do not negotiate the fees that the lawyer will charge to finish all your estate, he can charge you as much as 4% of the total value of the estate. So please sit down one time and calculate how much your estate will be. And if you don't negotiate these fees beforehand, yes, he has the right to charge you as much as 4% of the total value, regardless of how little work he does. And oh, have you ever heard of terminal tax returns? Yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. There's something called terminal tax return, which requires all the paperwork that your tax accountant is going to need. So why not have all of this organized beforehand when you still have time and energy and life? And should you have a house, well, why leave the problem of finding a realtor to your children or those who left behind? Why don't you take the time and look for a reliable realtor that can help them in this process and predefine it beforehand? And why do I need to tell you about all the junk you're going to leave behind? Now maybe you thought your children were wanted because it has sentimental value. And maybe, yes, some of it does have sentimental value, but I'm sorry to tell you, they don't have room for it. So why don't you find an organization that will be ready to take over all of this junk and all of this stuff, classify it, advertise it, sell it, and let your children take the proceeds. But give them the freedom to discard with all that you do not need. We briefly went through a list of 6 people that your children will confront and need, all those who are left behind. As you look at it, and by the way, there's a page 2 on your notes there, where you're going to see these pictures. How prepared are you? How prepared are you? What, maybe you could, beside each of this, rate them on a scale of 3 to 1. 3, yes, I have it totally prepared. My will is all taken care of. 3, my funeral plan is all taken care of. But maybe there are things that you're not prepared for. Would you please take a moment, I'll give you about 60 seconds. Think through all of these and rate them 3, 1, 2. 3, 1, 2. Could you take a moment, just mark them? Totally prepared, nothing done. Yes, I have some preparation, but still have some work to do. Now what we're going to do, we're going to break you up in teams of 2. We're going to let Zoom break you up in teams of 2, and we'd like to discuss this. How prepared are you? And what do you think you need to do? So you're going to have a partner, and between the 2 of you, just have a good discussion, and we're going to give you about, let's say, about 3 minutes for this dialogue and this discussion. So please take a few moments. We're going to break you up in teams of 2, so you can have a discussion with another person. Someone, you might be paired with somebody you know, but you may be paired with somebody you do not know at all. But have a good, honest discussion on which ones are you really prepared and which ones you are not prepared and what you would like to do about it. All right? Let's take a few minutes and do that. Okay, to help you in this planning, we have a booklet that you'll be able to download from our website. It has really, it's a collection of all the questions that the pastor, the lawyer, the tax man, all of these people, the funeral director will ask. And along with it, we will also be able to download a Microsoft Word document with an actual plan. It has information there as an example. Actually, it is my plan, taking out all the confidential stuff out of it. And you're free to modify it, update it, so you can leave it behind for those who are left behind. You know, just to show you, you can be extra prepared. You can be really prepared and have all of this paperwork in a binder. So for example, I have a binder with my picture on the outside of it. It says just in case, and because I care, I have put together everything that you're likely to need. It has copies of my passport, copies of my birth certificate, copies of my driver's license, copies of my credit cards, copies of all the documentation needed for the funeral director, including an outline for the service of my funeral. All the papers that the lawyer will require, all the papers that the tax accountant require, including a list of 2 possible realtors and a company that can get rid of all the junk that we might leave behind. It's all in a binder, and my children and my wife, they know exactly where that binder is. So when the time comes, they can enjoy the journey and without stress. Now, before you're gone, we want you to live the freedom years. We want you to live the freedom years. So what are the freedom years? You know, they say that life is like a roll of toilet paper. It moves faster as it comes closer to the end. And you're going to find that the freedom years will move much faster than you intended for them to be. So what are the freedom years? I'd like to suggest that the freedom years are made of 4 different stages. 4 different stages. They start with what we call limited freedom. Limited freedom. And limited freedom is really when you begin, your children are more independent. You don't have to drive them to hockey practice and piano practice anymore because they have their own cars and they're able to drive. And you have that extra time that you can use and make decisions. And unfortunately, you have 3 choices. You can give it back to the office and work longer and extra hours. Or you can sit in front of the tube and the TV and become a TV addict and literally atrophy as time goes by. Or you can be creative and energized by all the opportunities and the things you can do with that extra hour or 2 or 3 or 4 a week. The limited freedom will give room to what we call extended freedom. And extended freedom is when you don't have to work for earned income anymore. By God's grace, you have been privileged and you have enough to meet all your needs, and all your future needs are taken care of. You have a financial plan that can carry you through without any more earned income until age 100. There is a high probability that most of us will live to age 100. In my long-term financial plan, I have calculated that my wife and I will live to age 100. So what do you want to do with that extra wonderful time when you're like me? We don't have to work for earned income. Do you simply spend more time watching TV? Or do you invest it in creating new initiatives, starting new business for the glory of God, go on mission trips, starting new ministries, become more engaged in the community, and impact the world in a different ways? Then we come to what we call helpful freedom. That's what the time when you are free to ask for help. And yes, the time will come when we cannot do everything for ourselves. And we're going to need to have help. And knowing what you want for those years. Do you want your children to take care of you, or do you want external help to come and take care of you? And when the time comes and you really can't take care of yourself at all, and you need someone to manage your medication, give you a bath, and allow me to say, change your diapers. Who is going to do that? Do you want to be in a nursing home and a long-term care, or do you want to have someone care in your home? You need to make this wishes known so your loved ones do not have to struggle with it. And please be realistic in your expectations. Be honest with yourself. Don't put extra undue burden on your loved ones who have to struggle with guilt and fear of not doing enough for you. Then comes what we call ultimate freedom. Ultimate freedom. And that's when you're released from the constraints of this physical body and you soar up to heaven to meet your Maker, who will say, well done, good and faithful servant. So each of these are the 4 stages of what we call the freedom years. So what must you do to live life to the fullest? You know, in John 10:10, Jesus said that he came that you may have life and have it to the fullest. Every day of your life is involved in this living life to the fullest. Living life to the fullest. One of my favorite authors is Pastor Max Lucado. And he talks about living life to the fullest. He calls it living in the sweet spot of life. And you and I have an opportunity to live in that sweet spot of life to the very last breath we take. You and I have an opportunity to live life to the fullest. And by God's design, he wants us to live life to the fullest until the last day. So how do you do that? How do you do that? You do it by being fully engaged in life. Being fully engaged in life. And how do you do that? You do it by having a clear purpose, having a vision, having talents that you can use and employ to fulfill that vision, and then having a plan, having a well-documented plan of how you want to live each of these 4 stages of the freedom years we talked about. So let's touch a little bit on each of these. Having a purpose. You know, Jack Welch used to be the chairman of General Electric, and he's famous for saying that people work for money, but they give their life for a purpose. People work for money, but they give their life for a purpose. You see, purpose answers the questions of why. Why? Would you please take a moment and watch this video?
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. if you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's, you know, it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, you know, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened. You're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Found, was blind, but now I see.
Okay, here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
When you know your why, your life becomes more impactful because you're walking towards your purpose. So what is your purpose? Why? Do you ever ask, why am I here? Why am I here? My friend, regardless of your age, whether you are in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or 80 years old like me, as long as you have breath, God has a purpose for your life. As long as you have breath, God has a purpose for your life. The day God decides that He doesn't have a purpose for your life, that's the day when they're going to put you in a box. Now, there are many books that were written about having a life purpose, but I'm always energized by the simplicity of the early church catechisms. Back in the early church, there were short sentences called the catechisms, and those of you who are young enough, you may remember we had to memorize them in Sunday school. And one of the catechisms says, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. This is your highest purpose. And out of that, you can do a lot of things. So anything that you can do in life, as long as it can glorify God and or help you enjoy Him, it's within God's purpose. And the reason God has you on this earth is to glorify Him and enjoy Him, and enjoy Him. So out of that purpose, you need to ask, what's your vision? What's your vision? You see, everything starts with having a dream. Everything starts with having a dream. Proverbs 29:18 says, without a vision, people perish. Without a vision, we begin to atrophy and diminish and get weaker. So what's your vision? Do you remember when your children were small? You used to ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? Why did we ask them that question? Because we wanted them to have a vision that would energize them with hopes and aspiration of what the future holds. And whether you are in your 40s, 50s, or 80 years old like I am, in the eyes of your Heavenly Father, you are still His little child and He loves you. And He's saying to you, child, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? You know, unfortunately, when children are small, we ask them, what do you want to be when you want to grow up? Because we want them to have a vision and want them to have dreams. But then we grow older and people say, stop dreaming, be realistic. And we lose that ability to think like a child and dream and have visions. So if you are in this stage, may I ask you to ask God to give you a model for the coming years of your life. I have a model. You want me to tell you about my model? Well, I started to think of my model when I was turning 60. And people began to ask me, what is it you want to do when you retire? And my friends, I didn't have a clue of what I wanted to do when I retire. I knew a couple of things. I knew I didn't want to golf because I did not like golf. And I had friends who retired before me, and they spent about half of their year golfing and the other half of the year complaining about the weather. And I knew my wife would not want me to complain all the time. So I wanted to know, what is it that I would do in my retirement? And God provided me with a model. I asked God to give me a model, and God answered my prayer and He gave me a model. Let me tell you his story. His name is Ernest Lafont. That's his picture. Ernest Lafont was not born in a well-to-do home. As a matter of fact, his father left the family when he was 6 years old. His mother died on his 10th birthday. When the three little children were shipped to live with their grandmother, she was a very tough German woman. She looked at him and said to him, you're 11 years old, you've got to go and provide for yourself, go get a job. And this little tyke at 11 years old went and got 2 jobs. Early in the morning, he would go to the local bakery, pick up bread, and go on his bicycle selling fresh baked bread to the people in the neighborhood. After school, he went to the local diner to wash dishes until closing, and then go home and do his homework. He put himself through school. He put himself through 2 years of Bible college. That's where he met his sweetheart, Grace. They got married on their graduation day. They were 19 years old. After graduation, the church sent them as missionaries to Panama. They were in Panama for 4 years. Then they shipped them to Egypt. That's where I met him. And he became my spiritual father. They were in Egypt until we had the 6-day war with Israel, and they were evacuated from Egypt. They were shipped to Lebanon. They were in Lebanon until the Civil War. They were evacuated from Lebanon back to the United States. At that time, he was 65 years old, and the mission said to him, thank you very much, now you can retire. So he did some odd jobs and itinerant preaching, and then both him and Grace, at age 70 years of age, they went to Japan as missionaries, teaching English in the slums of Tokyo. They came back at age 75. And the mission said, well, thank you very much, now you can retire. At 78 years of age, he joined the police force as a chaplain. He had his uniform, and he used to love working the night shift because policemen talk a whole lot more at night. Plus, during the day, he cared for his wife who was developing Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, at age 84, he fell down and broke his leg, and he could not get in and out of police cruisers quickly. So he was fired from the police force, and so he took a job as the pastor for seniors in his local church. Unfortunately, at 95 years of age, he could not do much visitation at home because now he was in a wheelchair. So he started a new ministry. Every Monday morning, the church office sent him a list of all the people who missed church. And he would write them a handwritten card saying, "We missed you." And he would phone and follow up, praying for them. In front of him, there is a board of people that he prayed for every day of his life. Actually, this is his picture. We took it when we last visited him. He was 99 years of age at that time, and that's him sitting at his desk doing his ministry. Oh, I forgot to tell you, he remarried at 92. He remarried at 92. He married a woman that he's known for 50 years. Ernest LaFont carried his ministry until 2 months before he passed away at age 101 months old. He carried that ministry. That's my model. No, I'm not going to be exactly like him. I am not going to be a chaplain in the police force. I'm not going to go to Japan as a missionary teaching English. I'm not going to be a pastor for seniors. But he is my model because, like him, I want to live life to the fullest until the day they put me in a box. So who is your model? Who is your model? I hope having a model will give you a vision to help you live life with a purpose. Now, let's talk about having talents, because you see, God gave you talents. God gave you talents to fulfill the vision that He's given you. So do you know your talents? Do you know your talents? The Gallup organization, they do surveys around well-being and what makes people do well all around the world. They say that people who use their talents every day, are 300 times more likely to report having an excellent quality of life. So do you want to have an excellent quality of life? Here's your formula. Based on multitudes of research that's done by Gallup all around the world, use your talents every day. Find ways to use your talents every day. So do you know your talents? What are talents? Well, simply put, according to the science of strength psychology, it says talents are naturally recurring patterns of thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that can be productively applied. They are the things that you are likely to do naturally, but can be used in a productive manner. Let me give you an example. Two people walking down the street. They see a child that has fallen off a bicycle and bleeding from the head. One person would naturally run to the child, pick him up and hug him. Another person would naturally pick up the phone and call 911. These are the natural reactions to the same situation. This is a true indication of your talents. True indication of your talents. So what are your natural talents? What are your talents? Based on the talents of strength psychology, we have put together a stool. This is actually from a workshop that we do called Living Your Strength. And if you don't know your talents, we invite you to join us in a 12-week study called Living Your Strength. But this survey, this piece of paper, which you will find at the last page of your handout notes, is from the same course that we give for children ages 8 to 14. And in it, you're going to find 10 statements that reflect your most natural talents. Could you please pick up that sheet of paper? And I'd like you to glance through all of these 10 descriptions. And I'd like you to mark the one that resonates with you the most. You might find 2 or 3. But I'd like you to select one that you say, that really describes me. You see, that's your most natural talent. That's your most natural talent. Could you please I'm going to give you about 60 seconds. Take a look at this sheet, and would you please mark it? Mark the one talent that you feel, the one theme, actually these are called strength themes, the one theme that best describe you. For example, if you're an achiever, it would say, I tend to have more energy. If you are a caregiver, you have more empathy. So think of these and mark the one that is most likely to describe you the best. Could you please do that? Let's give you about 60 seconds to do that. Okay, another 30 seconds. Don't be overly analytical. Don't be overly analytical. Just your first impression. After all, you can go back and adjust that later on if you like. This is not a test. This is not a test. Okay, another 10 seconds. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Just as we did earlier, we're going to have Zoom break you up in teams of 2. We're going to have Zoom break you up in teams of 2. And with your partner, you might have a different partner, you might have the same one. We'll find out what Zoom does. But we're going to break you up into teams of 2. And with your partner, we'd like you to discuss which talent did you choose and why. Which talent did you choose and why? Why did you choose this talent? What do you see in it that describes you? Could you please do that? We'll give you about 3 minutes to briefly discuss with your partner which talents did you choose and why. Okay, I hope this was an interesting discussion. And by the way, this is something you could do with your family members when you go home. It helps generate some very interesting conversation. So we talked about purpose, we talked about vision, we talked about talents. Now let's talk about having a plan. Having a plan. And for each, the plan starts with the reality of the following. If you don't use it, you lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it. You see, your talents are very much like your muscles. They develop and grow as you use them. If you don't use them, they atrophy and get weaker. And my friend, in Matthew 25, Jesus gave a very powerful parable. We call it the parable of the talents. You may remember the story. A master gave each of his servants talents, and he said, I want you to go and use it. Multiply it, invest it. And when I come back, I'm going to ask you for an accounting. You and I have a God-given responsibility for 2 things. We have a God-given responsibility to know what we are given. So if you do not know your strength, if you don't know your talents, I urge you to join us in a 12-week study we call Living Your Strength. You have a responsibility to know what you're given, but you also have a God-given responsibility to invest it where it brings the greatest return for the kingdom of God until the day they put you in a box. You have a God-given responsibility to invest your talent, and you're going to be giving an accounting. When you and I meet God in heaven, He's going to say, what did you do with what I gave you? And you and I are accountable for 2 things that we can control. There are only 2 things that you and I can control. How we spend our money and how we spend our time. So are you investing the days and the time you're giving, using your God-given talents to maximum impact for the kingdom of God? Your plan will need to cover 4 different areas. For each of the 4 phases of your freedom years, limited freedom, extended freedom, helpful freedom, you need to have a plan that deals with your financial well-being, Do you have enough money to retire? You have enough money for all the stuff? Your physical well-being, keeping your body healthy and strong. Your emotional being, in being engaged with friends and loved ones to the full, as well as your spiritual well-being. No, we're not going to cover all of this here because that will take far too much time. But the book that we will send you has key questions that deal with each of these 4 phases. And the material that we will send you in this Microsoft Word document has spaces where you can begin to work and write that plan. And it's not something that you do once and you finish with it, but you do it for every phase of your life. So when you are in the limited freedom years, that's when you begin to think and dream about what you want to do in the extended freedom years. And during the extended freedom years, when you have all your mental capacity and resources, that's when you begin to do your plan for the helpful freedom years. So you're always ready, one step ahead of the game. Now, would you please take a few moments and watch this video as well? And sign your name to it, and sign your name to it. My friend, through this day, we've given you a collection of thoughts and tips. Consider them maybe as if they are a bunch of paintbrushes and YouTube and painting tubes, that you can begin to make your plan. Make your plan for your limited freedom years, the extended freedom, the helpful freedom, and now comes the ultimate freedom, the ultimate freedom. Every story needs to start with the end in mind. Every story needs to start in the end of mind. You know, I don't know about you. Through our married life, my wife and I, we've moved a few times. Some of you moved maybe more than we have. Some of you moved less. But regardless of how many moves you've made, there will always be one final move. One final move. In John 14, 2 and 3, Jesus says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. I go and prepare a place for you. And when I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you. So where I am, you will be also." So my question to you, do you know where your final move will be? There are only two destinations. There are only two destinations. If you are not sure that you have an eternal home with Him, would you please contact us? We have a web page in which we share our own story of how we developed our personal relationship with Jesus that would assure us of that eternal home. You've been very gracious participants. You've been very patient with us. We want to thank you for being with us. We're going to send you a link, or if you want to, you can take a picture of that QR code for a brief evaluation and feedback survey. We appreciate your feedback. And when you submit that survey, you'll find another link to where you can download the books and the resources we promised you. Thank you again for allowing us to spend this time with you. For those of you who would like to leave, we appreciate your time. We respect your time. Feel free to do so. But for those of you who still have time and would like to hang out with us, we'll just open the mic and just have a totally free, open discussion, answer any questions that you might have. We're here to really support you. We want to share with you as much as we can to help you. So for those of you who have the time and would like to linger around, we have all the night. It's still young, and we'll be glad to spend some time with you. Otherwise, have a wonderful evening. God bless you, folks, and goodbye for those who need to leave. God bless you. Goodbye.